Let me turn this one off.
Testing.
Mark. 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 Okay.
You tested? Good evening, everyone. If you all can start making your way towards your seats so that we can begin tonight. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're very happy that you all are here with us once again to our final FFAC meeting. My name is Lorena Garcia, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for Business and Operations, and want to give you a warm welcome and thank you for being with us through this process as you've joined us through several meetings and walkthroughs, and you remember all of those. But you all are here again supporting us, and for that we are very grateful. So tonight we have some distinguished guests with us. I would like to introduce our board president, Mr. Aaron Rivera. And also with us we have Roberto Carreon, our board member. We also have with us Robert Haddad, another one of our board members. And walking in right now, I see that we have our board vice president, Lucia Regalado. Welcome. And then with us as well is our superintendent, Dr. Rene Gutierrez. We also have with us tonight some of our partners that have been working with us throughout this process as well. We have representatives from Estrada Hinojosa, Dr. Miguel de los Santos, and Jose Silva as well as joining us. Thank you for joining us and supporting us. Our main guests for tonight that will be responsible for presenting to you all will be from Pfluger Architects. They will be providing the information that we have been working on throughout all of this process. Hopefully now you get a clearer picture after this presentation. It will provide a list of the projects that we would like to propose to the board for review for a bond issue. Also, there's budgets associated to that, so we're excited that they will be able to share with us that. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Robbie McGowan, and he will introduce his team.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Hope everyone is doing well. I understand kiddos were back in school today, so I know our staff is looking all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right after that first day back with kiddos. I want to again say before we get started with the information, just a word of gratitude. Gratitude to this group for, as Ms. Garcia said, you have been working through this process for months, thinking back to the initial meetings and your campus tours and the town hall meeting. And so want to acknowledge that time and the intent that you bring to this process. And you are a very important part of this process. This district has proven to be a district that is engaged actively with the community, both community members and staff members, and so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank also the Board of Trustees and Dr. Gutierrez and their leadership for going about this process in this very intentional way that is inclusive of the voices throughout the community. And so there's not a requirement legally that boards do that, or that superintendents do that with their community, but this board and the leadership of the district, that's important to them. And so I want to thank them for that as well. So what we'll, during tonight's meeting, we're going to just review real briefly. I know we've all had a holiday Christmas break since the last time we met, so we'll review what we discussed briefly at our last meeting, and also reintroducing you to what we call the project framework that helps us kind of understand the why behind the projects of a bond. And then my colleague, Josh Sawyer, will go through some in a little bit more detail about those projects and cost estimates. There's been a lot of work going on since the last time we met in terms of defining and doing some estimates with this, and Josh will walk you through that. And then we'll end by going through just letting you know what the next steps are. So last time we met, on December the 2nd, if you recall, you had an opportunity to respond to 2 questions that we asked you. The first question was your level of agreement with should the district approach this process in a way that they are planning for a no tax increase bond program. So in other words, a bond program that would generate dollars to address the needs of the district, but in a way that does not increase the tax rate. I am not. We have financial experts here in the room. I'm not one of them. Yes. No tax rate increase. Thank you, sir. That's right. No tax rate increase. I don't have control over the appraisal, but no tax rate increase. Thank you. Yes, sir. That's very, very important. But what I do know is because of the financial stewardship of the district and in working with their consultants, the district is in a position that without a tax rate increase, they could generate, the estimate is up around $335 million to address the needs of the district, the prioritized needs of the district. That really tells 2 stories. That tells a story of good financial stewardship. What that also tells, though, is it's oftentimes if you have that ability, that means it's been a while since there's been a bond program, which means there are likely very, very important needs that need to be addressed. So what we heard back from this committee is, and if you'll recall, it was on a scale of 1 to 4. And so 3.8 was the average score. That is something that this group was in very strong agreement that should be the way that the district should proceed. The next question we asked you, we have the project framework that I mentioned earlier, and we had those categories. There will be projects from every category in the bond. What we asked you to tell us was, in your opinion, how would you prioritize those categories? And that's important there's lots of ways that we prioritize potential bond projects. Sometimes it's prioritized because it's the area of greatest need. Maybe that's an area that it's been the longest that we've done something. Or it's an area that has a really strong impact on our instructional programs. And so getting data on different ways to prioritize projects is important because prioritization is necessary. $335 million is a lot of money. And it's also not enough to do every single thing that you can imagine in the district. So the district does have to go through a prioritization process. So we asked if you had to prioritize these, I refer to them as buckets, right? The buckets or the categories of the framework, how would you prioritize them? There was one kind of clear-cut leader, the wellness and safety, and then if you notice, the rest of them were fairly close. And again, all of these are important. I want to be really clear about that. That is not to say that learning beyond the classroom projects are not important. It's just that as we're prioritizing how do we prioritize those categories? So this is wanted to give you those results. We actually shared this with the board back before the holidays. So any of you that were at that board meeting or viewed that board meeting may have already seen this, but we wanted to make sure that all of you had a chance to see those results. So let's briefly, before we get into the detail about projects, let's review what those project buckets or the project framework categories are. If you'll recall, and again, these are listed, they're not listed in the same order as your prioritization. They're listed the way we presented them to you the first time. But the first is modernizations and alignment. So those are things to modernize our learning environments, and we provide a couple of examples under each one of those. But you see like CTE expansions or cafeteria modernizations, those would be examples that fall under that. Alignment, so alignment with the mission and the programs and the goals of the district as well as modernization. Wellness, safety, and security, the second one, that's pretty self-explanatory. Those, like front entry, security, campus access, security access. But we also think about things like an elementary gymnasium, right? Do our elementary students have an indoor space, a climate-controlled space where they can learn, because that can be a safety and wellness issue as well. Learning beyond the classroom, fine arts modernizations is an example, but also athletics, renewing and refreshing athletic spaces and locker rooms and things like that, that could fall under a category like this. District equity and growth. So we have classroom additions. We have some campuses that are in need of classroom additions that would take the place of portable buildings. But we also have campuses that need to be updated to make them more equitable across the district. So refresh could mean those things. Those things could be to your core academic classrooms. They could be to support space. Again, I mentioned earlier, athletics could be in those areas as well. And then the last is this area of kind of capital and deferred maintenance. I want to be real clear about this because Mr. Trevino and I talk about this phrase deferred maintenance all the time. That doesn't mean that we're not doing maintenance on our buildings. What it means is that we've reached a time to where there's some important maintenance type things that it's ready for them to take place. And they're more, just like at your home, they're more than what may be in your monthly budget. Yeah, my guess is, I don't know about all of you, I don't necessarily see everyone's budget, but I know in my budget, I don't necessarily have in the monthly budget to replace the air conditioner at my house. Well, that's no different than your school buildings. So you see those types of things, roof repairs, lighting, HVAC, which is air conditioning, heating, and ventilation. So those are the project frameworks. As you see, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Sawyer here in just a second. He will use this framework also to kind of walk you through what some of these specific projects are. So, Josh.
Thank you, Robbie. So we're going to roll through these a little bit, provide a little bit more details on them. You've seen these projects at the previous meeting. In the categories and a lot of the things that we've been talking about, but we've recategorized all of the projects that you've seen so far into these buckets, as well as these projects that you're seeing down below. So you're going to see some lumping of campuses that have similarities, things that need to happen across the district within these buckets. Additionally, with this, we're going to be showing, these are just images, inspirational photos to help understand what these spaces might entail. These are by no means the spaces that you have now or the spaces you will have. These are representative photos to help understand the quality and the types of spaces that we're talking about in relationship to the categories that are being presented. Additionally, you're going to find on the slides is a dollar figure, and that's the work that we've been doing to help identify the needs for these individual programs and providing a cost estimate for what it's going to take to do that work. And when you're looking at those dollars, those are the all-in dollars. Those are the dollars it takes not only to build and construct something, but it's all of the costs that go into that as well as it relates to the things that need to go in there, like furniture and technology, design, construction, all the different aspects of designing a building. Oftentimes we see all-in total project cost, which is what this is, but you may also in some instances see construction cost, and so those are two totally different numbers. Construction costs are a part of the total project cost, so we're looking at total project cost. This is everything it costs in order to do these projects. So the first one on the page here is the CTE expansion at the high schools. So this would be looking at expanding the high schools at McAllen, the CTE spaces at the high schools at McAllen High School, Memorial, and Rowe. This is looking at more specifically providing modernized space for those CTE programs. And we talk about it in the architectural world is CTE spaces that are in the high intensity world and the low intensity. So when you think about high intensity, these are going to be your equipment heavy, hands-on, automotive, welding, construction, those types of spaces. And when you look at modernized space with high schools and schools across the country, they have greatly changed due to the skills and the things needed for students to not only train and get certified in those programs, but to get them job ready coming out of high school. Low intensity labs are usually our ones. They're still intensive. They require equipment, but you may think of like health sciences, culinary. They're a different type of equipment. We're not talking about heavy machinery. We're talking about different types of skills and equipment associated with those. So this project in particular would be looking at modernizing space, adding new space to the high schools to support those high-level programs with the equipment and the needs that the students need for a certification level in high school today and moving into the future. So that has a total value of $39.49 million. All of our numbers are rounded up to a 10,000, so you're going to see kind of those numbers. That's the rounding figure that we have. The next project under the modernization and alignment category is a cafeteria modernizations. This would be at Milam, Alvarez, Seguin, and Morris Middle School. And these are going to be campuses that currently have undersized food service facilities as it relates not only to the cafeteria but also the kitchen. So looking at those spaces and providing not only appropriate modernized space for those facilities, but really to the size and the needs within the food service department to provide adequate services for the students at those campuses. This value is at $33.05 million for those 4 campuses. Moving on to the wellness, safety, and security category, we're looking at front entry security, vestibules, and access. This is at McAllen, Memorial, Rowe, De Leon, and Morris. This is reconfiguring and looking at those entry sequences as it relates to getting into those buildings. Some of the campuses have had safety and security upgrades over time, but when you look at them, they don't provide a full support to allow that access to happen more cleanly. So this is re-looking at that and modernizing that with new equipment, new entrance sequences within the new front entry to allow for those more connected pieces to happen on the safety and security side. This value was at $13.47 million for those 5 campuses. The next project is the elementary school gyms and enclosures. This was looking at adding some gyms to a few of the campuses and then enclosing some existing pavilions at a couple other campuses. That would be Perez, Castaneda, Sanchez, Hendricks, and Houston elementary schools. So this is not only in some campuses providing a whole modernized, equitable gymnasium for that campus, but in the others enclosing those pavilions to provide a safe and secure environment for the students at those elementaries. This value was at $26.92 million. Rolling into the category of beyond the classroom, this is going to be looking at fine arts modernizations at the high schools, McAllen, Memorial, and Rowe. This is adding theatrical black box multipurpose space at the high school, as well as bringing mariachi space to the campuses to have their own dedicated space as a part of the fine arts programs. Adding those 3 facilities at each one of the high schools is a value of $35 million. The next category, district equity and growth. The first project on that list is the classroom additions. This is at Gonzales, Milam, and Morris. This is adding additional classroom space to those campuses to help offset some of the special programs that those campuses has, as well as adding some capacity-sized classrooms for those campuses that have some needs with portables and things that are on that campus. This value for the 3 campuses was at $38.73 million. The next project is a campus refresh at the high schools. This is at McAllen Memorial and Rowe. This is a full campus refresh of all 3 of the existing high schools. When we talk about refresh, we're talking about looking at modernizing the finishes, the look, everything inside of the building, everything from floors to ceilings to walls to upgrading spaces within the individual departments. So we're talking about general academics, we're talking about public spaces, we're talking about athletics and fine arts, but replacing a lot of the finishes and updating those campuses, which is part of a lot of the deferred maintenance opportunity. But this is called out specifically as an opportunity to bring all 3 of those campuses together. This has a value of $45.15 million. The next one at the district-wide level is these were identified priority 1 projects. So the district had a facility assessment conducted that's been shared as a part of the process so far, and as a part of that, a lot of particular items were pointed out across a lot of the campuses, and this is pulling in some very specific things and then lumping in which campuses those things exist at. So the main categories that were established here as priority 1s, these are the must-to-dos as a part of the bond, was the HVAC upgrades, site paving repairs, roofing repairs, LED lighting, safety, security, and access controls, and HVAC controls. And what you're seeing there on the right are the campuses for each one of these categories in which those particular needs were identified. And then on LED lighting, safety and security, and access controls and HVAC controls, that is a district-wide upgrade to bring those to modernized systems across the district. This was valued at $103.19 million. This is a large amount of money because there's a lot of work done in here. This is what would be a part of the capital and deferred maintenance bucket. And then other priority 1 projects that were identified as part of the report would be completed with any remaining funds once all of these major projects are identified. And those are kind of one-on-one projects that would be identified as priority 1s from the reports that were generated from the facility condition assessment. So just as a recap, we have the 5 buckets that we had been talking about listed here. We have each one of those projects that we listed and talked through, as well as the dollar values associated with that. And when you add all of those numbers up, that equals the $335 million bond capacity in which we've been speaking about. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rami.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it very much. I'll just say again, I mentioned briefly before I turned it over to Josh, but again, to share a word of gratitude, the district staff and then our team from Pfluger and I have been working on a lot of work goes into those calculations, and it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we want to do an addition and this is how much we want to calculate per square foot. It's, again, aligning to the mission and vision of the district, making sure, you heard me say this at the last meeting, I believe, but this process is about instruction and not construction, right? And so making sure that we're aligned with that. So a lot of work went into that too. Before we go on to next steps, I want to also introduce some other of our team that are here. We have Connie Rivera and Sean. Oh my gosh, I just totally drew a blank on Sean's last name, Connor. And that's what happens when you don't have a script. And 2 of our architecture leaders in our firm, and then Dr. David Young, who also works in our communications and community engagement. So, and there are lots of other folks on Josh's team and their team that are behind the scenes and supporting you, and we're excited about the future of what could be in store for students and staff and community here in McAllen. So what happens next? So what next? Because it may seem like, first of all, it may seem like May is a long way away, but we have a lot of educators in the room, right? When's the last time you felt like a spring semester of a school year took a long time? It goes by in a blink of an eye. And so there are lots of things to happen between now and a May bond election, but it will happen very quickly. So as a reminder of what the process, I think we've shared this generally, but some details here. We're obviously meeting tonight. You see that's the first date listed under January. Next week on the 13th at the board meeting, we will have a presentation very similar to this tonight, where we'll be able to interact with the board and share this with the board. I would ask you, if you're able, if you've been a part of this process, sometimes just your physical presence is important, and if you to show the board that, and I know the board knows this, but to have you in the room and there to when the board hears this presentation, it can be helpful. I know all of you are busy and have lots of other things on your plate, but if you are able to join us next week for that board meeting, would appreciate that. The board will then on January the 29th at their board meeting there have an opportunity to look at what a draft bond resolution would look like. Elections are very legal things, and so there's the legal language that goes into putting that together. We had a good meeting yesterday with the district's legal counsel and financial advisors, and just making sure all of those T's have to be crossed and I's have to be dotted, and the board will have an opportunity to look at that in January, at the end of January on the 29th. Then the plan would be on February the 10th that the board would call for the bond election at that time. The law requires that be done by February the 13th. And so the board would do that at that time. Then what we have is we have this time during March and April, in between when the election is called, where you just see one line item there in March that says community engagement. But that's a very important time. Because what's important is, even though we have a good-sized group in this room, there are a whole lot of people in the community, right, that won't have this information at the way you've had it. There is the website that the district has done a great job about being transparent with this process, and it will be important to continue to educate the community. And the board and the district can do that. The district can legally educate the community during an election time. And so we'll be working alongside and supporting the district in that regard. And a big part of that is not just educating them, but just reminding people that their voice is important and to vote. That's their right to be able to do that, and to remind them to get out and do that. So that will be happening in March, and then early voting starts in April. The last day to register to vote is April the 2nd. So any of you in here who, I'm not going to ask you to identify yourself, but if you're not registered yet, April the 2nd would be the last day that you can register to vote for the May election. Early voting would be April the 20th through the 28th. And then Election Day is Saturday, May the 2nd. So those are the next steps ahead. What I'll do is I'll turn it back over to the district. We'll be right here, too, if we can help in answering any questions. But if anyone has any questions for us. So, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. McAllen and Mr. Sawyer, for that wonderful presentation. At this time, we would like to open it up for feedback from the FFAC and community members that are present. We do have a microphone that we can provide you if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for us. So we would like to get started with that. Would anybody like to? Dr. DeShazo? Yes. Oh, okay. The mic's right here. Let's give you, we're going to give you a mic. Okay.
Okay, what I was asking this gentleman sitting next to me, when you say you're not going to have a tax rate increase, where are you going to get the money?
The total tax rate is not going to increase from what taxpayers are currently paying now. The money, we will continue to tax at the same tax rate, which is the 13 cents in the interest and sinking fund that we are currently using to pay down our current bond debt. So what's going to happen is that's going to align finishing up paying our current bond debt with initiating the new debt. So it'll just to put it in layman's terms, it's kind of like if you have a car payment right now and you're paying, you know, $700 and you would like to get a new car. Well, with the same $700, you would go out and purchase a new car, but you would keep the same payment. So that's where the money is coming from. It is coming from the taxpayers.
You think the average voter understands that?
We hope, we know that it is, taxes and tax rates are very complex matters. It's not something that we deal with every day, but what we plan to do is provide as much education to our community through various channels, various mediums, through our marketing team, and of course presentations from our administration, our board of trustees, community members. If we have volunteers also that would like to join us in that effort, we would provide as much information as possible, doing presentations, putting out material. We do have a website where we also broadcast information. All of our meetings are broadcast over the internet and are saved for anybody to go back. So as much as we can do to educate the public, we want to be as transparent as possible in this process.
Yes. And to continue to add to that, once we, you know, if the board approves to go out and call on the bond on February the 10th, after that, we will be designing pamphlets so that your typical community member can understand it as far as when it comes to the bond, the projects, and the tax rate. The tax rate really is not rocket science to understand it. It's 13 cents that we're utilizing right now because we're paying some bonds from years past. Those bonds are gonna get paid for. All we're saying is, let us keep those 13 cents and we can borrow this money so that we can continue remodeling and upgrading our district, utilizing the same 13 cents because we're gonna pay debt that we're gonna liquidate very quickly, very soon. And all we're saying is, okay, let's continue using those 13 cents and let's go borrow this so that we can upgrade the district and maintain that rate the same. Does that make sense, everyone? Like, but we will design a chart that would be understood as basic as possible. And that's part of our job. Our job is to educate and to inform. And we're gonna be doing a lot of that as we go out there after February the 10th and be able to make those kind of presentations, just like we're making this presentation here. It's gonna be identical throughout the community. The more we go out there, the more informed we're gonna be with the community and be as transparent.
Because Dr. Gutierrez, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone, sure, but the presentations that all of you have done have been very good. You present, you say all of these things here, you explain, this is where it's gonna go, the board did a great job, the facilities group did a great job. Y'all are talking pretty. How are we gonna get that information to the voters? How are we gonna get the voters? Because ultimately, you can talk all you want here, but it's the voters that are gonna make the decision.
Correct.
And that man in the corner over there, in that little house over there, he's not gonna know about 13 cents and you know, all this and all that, and what we're gonna do with the driveways and the auditoriums. I think we need some people who are professionals, perhaps, I wanna say political professionals, but maybe election professionals, voter professionals that can help you get this information to the voters. because you're going to need an X number amount of voters to pass a bond issue. And I'll be very honest with you. I was at an event last night with some realtors, and their answer is no. And I said, well, I'm going to go to a meeting tomorrow, and realtors have a lot to do with how things are done because they sell houses and they're concerned about taxes, and that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think realtors have never supported because it's their job is to sell homes, but our job is to educate. I don't think anybody out there wants to say no to kids and to improve our facilities, and that's what we're going to be focused on. We're focused on kids, and we're focused on making the district better, and we're going to need everyone's help. That's why we have this committee, this group, to help us spread that word, because I can't do it alone, board members can't do it alone, but we're going to put subcommittees together to go out there and make those presentations. And our website, our social media is going to be utilized as much as possible as we are now to make sure that this information gets out there to as many people as possible. The beauty of this is that there's only one thing on the ballot that we know of, and that is this bond if it goes through. There's nothing else in May. I'll get to your question.
Okay.
We'll get, in May, that's the only thing that's going to be this proposition, McAllen ISD, the bond. So there won't be any confusion with anything else that we know of. It's only going to be this item. And so that's going to be good for us because it won't confuse the voter with other propositions or other type of elections going on May 2nd. So that's the beauty of it, that it's only focused on McAllen ISD. So that's a good advantage that we have to spread out the word, educate as much as possible, and be able to hopefully have the positive results. Now, I do want to caution everyone here that as educators, as employees of McAllen ISD, we cannot go out there and say, vote for the bond. We're not allowed to do that. Our board can do it, our community members can do that. We can't do that. Our job is to inform them and educate them on what are the advantages of having a bond approved for McAllen ISD. That we're allowed to do. So that's where I'm going to need the help of community members that can say that. I can't say it, but I can educate, and that's what we're going to do as employees, educate, educate, educate. But community members, elected officials, you can say the vote for, support it, and those kinds of words that we cannot say. But however, we will educate through our flyers and our pamphlets. Ma'am?
Well, that's a good point, because as a community member out there, I think the voters have gotten very cynical, and they also are leery, paranoid a little bit about what they're presented. So when we talk about marketing campaigns, as I've talked to the public the last few weeks, they say they will come out with their slick brochures and their marketing campaign, but a lot of that is just posture. You made a statement a few minutes ago, because what they're saying is, in effect, if we don't vote for this, our taxes will go down. And I think we have to be honest about that. And you made a good statement. You said, we're just asking for the same 13 cents. Instead of stressing, you know, that tax level will stay the same, I think the man on the corner in the little house can understand if we say, we just want the same 13 cents. Yes, your taxes would go down, but we'll get all of this just for the same 13 cents.
Exactly.
That's just what I want to say.
Correctly. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. Any?
This one over here.
Are we able to use the kids to provide information, maybe not promote, but provide information, or maybe get some kids in a campaign and say, this is what I'm looking forward to, you know, getting this and this and this?
I think there's a gray area on that, on our part, to do that. I think if it does happen, it would have to be it would have to occur. You as an independent, as a parent with kids or with a group of students, for example, but not tied to us, because we can be crossing that line of saying vote for, and we can't do that. Our kids, if they're under our watch, cannot say that. So if any students may be part of it, it would have to be done independently by our community members, but not by McAllen ISD, because it's a gray area. What if the kids go out there under our watch and be saying, vote for it, vote for it? They're speaking for us during our time, and that may create problems. And I think it's better if we explain it as adults, because it may be a little bit complicated for a student to explain it, so it may be better for us to do that education or explanation to the community.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for bringing that up. That's important.
I would just say on that topic, my understanding is it's not just our voice, but it's our resources. So our computers, our Wi-Fi, our cameras that are owned by the district, any district-owned resources cannot be used to promote an election action.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing it up. That is true. And just so you know, I think it's important. I know the district leadership knows this. District is well represented both with internal legal counsel and with specific bond counsel. One thing, because I know we also have a lot of employees in the room, so I do want to say this as well. Employees are, as long as they adhere to those guidelines, not, no district resources, which means your work time, your work laptop, your work, all of that. However, outside of that, with the exception of a key district employee who is always on duty, but the employees can advocate on their own time using their own resources. So that is something that can be done.
Thank you. We have a question over here.
Talking about the resources and promotions, so I'm the principal at Morris, and Morris is all over the bond proposal. Am I allowed to have people, I would love to have people come to the campus and walk and show them what we're looking at and what my classrooms look like and what the lighting looks like and what the cafeteria looks like. Is that something, because it's happening during school time? I mean, I don't know. Where do we look like with that?
Well, yes, we can do that. I mean, as long as...
Because it's just informing. We're not...
It's just informing. As long as we're
Okay.
not in educating the need, the necessities of what Morris needs, for example, in this case, yes, as long as we don't get caught up in the vote for, support the bond, those kind of terms is what we cannot do. But yeah, in your own time, in your own, evenings, weekends, in your own time as employees, with the exception of me, but you can do more than that. You can then be as open about it and say that to community members. I think that the key is that we are going to have some subcommittees, and we are going to put up a presentation together. So as committees and groups go out there, we are saying the same thing and presenting the same information to everyone, so that there is no confusion. So we have a lot of work after February the 10th, if the board approves this. We have a lot of work on that community engagement that you saw. That part is part of February, March, and part of April. So there's a lot of work to be done, but there's a big need. And going back to the 13 cents, yeah, if it doesn't pass or if it doesn't go out, yes, 13 cents less. But what happens next time we need a bond? Because we need it anyways, but what happens 3 years, 5 years from now? Now there's going to be an increase, and it's going to be a lot bigger and more expensive. So those are the things that we also need to talk about to everyone out there in the community. But we're going to be focused on the projects. We're going to be focused on the benefits for our kids and how long, and it's long overdue, and the things that we're going to bring McAllen ISD to a higher standard in our facilities. Ma'am?
How long will it take to pay this bond off then?
I'm sorry?
How long will it take if this new one was passed? How many years?
I'm going to pass it on to our financial advisors on how long would it take for this bond, if it passes, to pay it. Is it a 25-year note, 30-year note? What is it?
This bond, as most bonds, is long-term financing, like borrowing money to pay off a house over the long term. It's for 30 years. So whatever mortgage schedules that we set for the debt that the district will take on will be paid off over 30 years. We haven't, I've been in the business for a while, and we haven't, yeah, that's a good point that my colleague made, Jose. The bonds also, when the district goes out to borrow $335 million, or for asking for approval from the community, from the voters, to be able to borrow $335 million, the way that we have set up the mortgage is for 30 years payment over the life of the bond. However, the district won't go out and borrow $335 million in 2027. The district will go out and borrow, I believe it is, we have it set up for $100 million. The difference is just, the difference is left in, you know, it's not being used, it's not, it hasn't been borrowed, it's not incurring interest until it is issued. The following years, we borrow another 50 or 60 or whatever the amounts are. And then the third year, we borrow another amount. So it's not like you go and borrow $335 million that you know you can't spend anyway in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And so as you borrow it over the years, by the time that you borrow the fourth year, you've already paid on the first year, 4 years. So all of the bonds, I've been in the business like 31 years, I think. And all of the bonds that we have ever done that I know of, unless they're very small bonds, are 30-year amortization. The state allows up to 40 years. We've never done that. So it's just a little bit long. But 30 years is the normal for our houses too. On another note, on high school students, I believe, and we can get Matt Lee, our attorney, to verify, but there's 18-year-olds all over in our 4 high schools. They're voters like the rest of you are, and the rest of community vote. And I think that they need to be informed, you know, get the same information that we're going to provide to the public in general to those kids, including if you're not registered to vote, you should. I mean, that's part of the process of getting involved in our government. So that's my opinion.
No, definitely, and we have a lot of kids that are turning 18, if not first semester, by second semester. And it would be a good lesson to have all of them like in an auditorium, 18-year-olds, and just go over the whole process. And it's part of the democratic process. Yeah.
That's actually what I was going to ask, because we do have a lot of 18-year-olds, and getting them registered is part of the process that they go through in their in one of their history classes. But my question stems around the concept of educating, right? So are we able to educate our seniors, for example, during school time, or it has to be after school hours, like on this particular concept?
As long as we're giving information, yes, because we're educating.
Yes,
It's
educating.
information, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Well, we'll get more direction, but we know that we can do it during school time, but as long as it's information, educative, and not into the vote for or supported. There's a question over there.
So if this bond passes and you see the 30-year, loan, what's the time frame for these projects to finish from start?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and defer to Pfluger, but there is the 330 million is there's a breakdown of into 4 years by certain amounts depending on the projects. So, but I believe that we have 4 years to start and complete these projects or more. But let me turn it over to them. But if it passes right after that, then there's going to then develop a construction timeline of each of the projects and how long it's going to take and which ones we're going to take on first. But let me go ahead and turn it over to them to answer this question.
Yeah, I was just pointing to our colleagues in the back because they do all the management side of this. But as a planner, I know the process. I just wanted to ask. But typically what we do in these processes is work with the district to identify a timeline and a schedule. That's going to really determine when projects are going to be completed and when they'll be turned off or turned over. Obviously, size of projects, the needs, the logistics to get into a campus, going through permitting with the city. There's a lot of things that go into not only determining what the projects are going to be, but carrying them all the way through the construction process. So the answer is that it will be built out over a number of years. We don't know exactly how many years yet, and we don't know what time frame each project will be done. We have created a series of projects that have been determined to be a part of the bond. It's got to go through the process with the board to be called, and then once that's done, then we can sit down and start to iron out those schedules and understand kind of the process of what it be. But usually, typically, it's going to be a 3 to 5 year to get through everything to do that. That's typical for most, but it just depends on the level of work and how much needs to be done and the longevity of some of the projects. Some projects last a year, some may last 2 years. It just depends on the work and the needs that are there.
Yeah, no, thank you, because that's probably, we're going to educate the public, the community. They're
Yeah.
going to say, well, how long is this going to take these projects?
Yeah, that is.
And that would be beneficial.
I would say
to
the
us.
hardest thing for most folks is to realize that this is a process, right? A bond gets called, we go through the election cycle, things happen, the election passes. What happens next, right? And people often think that the moment it passes, I'm going to start seeing stuff happening. There's a design process, there's construction that has to go on. So it is good to educate the public on understanding that it is a years-long process to get through everything, and there may be some areas that you see sooner than others. There's a lot of things at play with construction, timing. Some projects have to be completed over a summer because we don't want to disturb teaching and learning on the school year time. There's a lot of things at play, but patience and understanding that it does take time to get through everything is critical to the process.
So while we're working with our community members, working on that education piece, I think part of it's also managing expectations of the project and the final results. And so you just mentioned about how access to the schools, construction schedules, things like that come into play when setting a timeline. How does the prioritization of the buckets come into play? How do we communicate to our community members, look, this is a bucket 4 category project, but it's getting completed and started much sooner than maybe the category 1 projects?
Yeah, I would say there's not necessarily a correlation to the buckets and the projects that we're saying that are here. When we go talking about the projects to the community, that was the primary purpose of showing the buckets and talking about it. So rather than talking about X school is getting this project, talking about it from a standpoint that we're looking to expand cafeterias to create opportunity for our food service across the district is an easier way to communicate that versus focusing on every little individual project that's happening at campuses. Ultimately, at the end of the day, community members, a lot of the public are going to be interested in their schools, the things they're connected to. So it's important to talk about that, but when you're talking about the broad program and we talk about support of the kids, it's about talking about the commonalities of the bond program across all of the campuses and not focusing more solely on this campus. Inevitably, it'll happen, but that was why we designed it this way, so that when you guys are communicating, you can talk about CT expansion as a whole for the district as an educational progression versus McAllen is going to get some CT programs at the high school, if that makes sense. The scheduling and the prioritization of all that will be completely unraveled into every single project and timelined out for every single project. So when we get to that point, every campus, every project will be looked at individually outside of the buckets, because the timeline where we work, what happens with the campuses will all be independent of those individual campus needs.
I'm gonna, excuse me. I'm gonna follow up on her question because I know we're gonna get asked this in the community, and thank you for asking that because I think it's a great question. I think part of her question was, you know, let's say I'm in the Milam community, and we're gonna build out the Milam cafeteria, so I'm gonna want to know when that's gonna be, and we're saying this is gonna be in several tranches, but when, you know, I think before we vote on the bond, I think it's important for us to at least outline that time schedule, not only after it is approved, because the community is going to want to know if we're going to invest in the the multi-purpose rooms and the mariachi rooms. Well, Memorial parents, Mackay parents, Nicaragua parents are going to want to know, was that going to happen in 2027 when my daughter or son is a sophomore, or is that going to happen in 2029 when they've already graduated? Is that kind of what you were getting to? Yeah.
Right, and some of that information is, as you said, it's important to be shared and will be shared. That's part of the communication. Some of that is unknown until you get into the design part of it to know, is this work that can be done? Does it have to be done outside of the school year? Is it work that can be done? What is the disruption to the instructional setting? Also, in terms of staging, there's some economic advantages you can get with staging some of this work as well. And so I do believe there can be some general information shared, but I don't know that it would be a very specific, say month and day and year. I don't know that you could get to that specificity prior to the election. Right.
Because we are doing phases.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So phases of what projects we anticipate and what phase.
Yep. And that's kind of all a part of that that planning schedule. And that's the thing too, is that as we work alongside the district, we're not that work doesn't stop on February the 10th when the board calls for the election. We're continuing to work and planning out how would that be staged. How would we do this in a way that we can be the least disruptive to what's going on in the school while we're doing the construction, that kind of thing. So we'll continue to work on that even in between when the bond is called and the election. Josh, I don't know if you have anything else.
What I've seen in other districts when they have a bond is that they bid out multiple projects with multiple contractors, so that it's not just one contractor waiting to that contractor to finish to move on to the next project. What they've done is they've spread out the work to different contractors, different architects, so that we can reach that timeline a lot faster and sooner by having multiple bidders and contractors out there in the field. Perhaps the contractor that's doing the classroom expansion at Milam, there will be probably a different contractor at Gonzalez. And there will be a different contractor doing the roofing and those kinds of things. So to speed up that timeline and move to where we can meet it as soon as possible is by bidding out and having multiple contractors and architects and engineers taking on different projects throughout the district so that it can speed up the process and move it faster. Of course, that takes time, but that's what most districts do. They spread the wealth among different contractors to be able to speed up that timeline.
Yeah, I think another question would be like, so in the presentation, for example, it mentions CTE expansion at the high schools, and all three high schools are mentioned, but is there going to be more specificity or renditions of what that's going to look like? This is what it's going to look like at Rowe, we're adding this, and at McHigh, and the same for like the high school refresh. Like, what does that look like? What is that going to look like at Memorial? What is that like? Is there going to be renditions or something that we're going to share with the public so they know what this bond is going to get each of the campuses?
Yeah, there can be more detail added to that, and we've been working with the district, and we're trying to kind of piecemeal this information to you guys to make it digestible. But particularly on the CTE expansion side, we've been working with the district to help not only analyze the space that's in the existing campuses, and that's a lot of the work that Dr. McAllen talked about that we're doing on the back end to evaluate and understand what exists, but also work with the district and what could be the future. It's a fine line with this. Planning is both an art and a science. We are trying to think ahead and understand what the future needs are, but we also need to understand that the work and the design work that comes from this could be a year or two down the road, depending on where this all falls. So to get too far ahead and identify something, and then 2 years if this were to start, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals, right? If it were to change, then people said, well, you said it was going to be this. And this kind of goes back to the same thing with timelines and deadlines. The moment you say something, you sit in a room and you say, this is what we're thinking, the person hears the date, right? They hear, you said May of 2027 was when this was going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then you've got the back end of that. Well, that's what you said. Well, okay, but we're still working through all of these. That's why it's got to be careful. We've done the best we can to analyze everything from a standpoint of where we're at. You guys have been evaluating and understanding all the processes and the opportunities. And as we continue to work through the process, we continually add more and more detail to help understand more specifics. So as those become available, we can provide that based on the work that we're doing with the district.
So I like to kind of piggyback on his comment and question. So there seems to be a lot of work that's been done, right, to come up with $335 million worth of projects. And I wasn't here for the meeting in December, so for me there's a little bit of a data gap to understand exactly what is in each one of these buckets, right? I look at HVAC and I can understand what that means, right? But I look at modernizations for fine arts, I don't know what that means. I don't know what square footage is being used, what was proposed to come up with $35 million for fine arts modernization. So I'd like to understand what that means, right, as a community member, so I can go back to our community membership and fill them in as to this is what the concept is, and this is how they arrived at $35 million for fine arts modernizations. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, that there's work done, but there isn't specificity. It seems to me that there is some specificity that was used to come up with all of these numbers. So I'm interested in what those details are. So I would request a meeting with your group or Mr. Thervia to understand exactly what that means for, I think, each one of these buckets, so I can, again, report back to our membership and have them say, yes, we like this plan, or hey, can we tweak this, or what was your thought process? What was the input from district leadership and other folks to you to say, this is what we're thinking conceptually, right? And is there an opportunity to maybe change that as we go along the way? There was also a note, I think, in the HVAC or priority one that said, there was an asterisk that said something about any remaining funds will be used for priority one. I'm thinking that every bucket that is projected to be used is going to want all the funds used for their project, right? Then there might not be anything left on the table. So are you thinking that there is going to be money left on the table for maybe some of these buckets to be used for this other, let's say HVAC or other priority one projects? And then thirdly, as we go through this, right, it seems to me that there's a lot of stakeholders here that'll be tugging on the board members that are here. My priority is more important than that one and that one and that one. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of, not infighting, but just a high level of interest, right, on our elected leaders to say that their project is super important than the next one and the next one and the next one. So I'm curious what that thought process and deliberation is going to look like, because our community members are going to know and want to know, why is their project last on the list? Even though it's a priority, it's passed by the bond, why is their project 5 years into once the bond is passed? So, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to tackle,
sorry about that.
No, you're okay. I'm going to try to tackle some of those questions. So on the fine arts piece, as we were talking through the presentation, currently in that allocation was to add theater arts space, which would be a black box theater, true theater teaching space, as well as mariachi space that is not available for use on the campus. So some of those programs are in portable buildings and what I would say spaces that are not necessarily designed for to support those programs. So that money was meant to design a facility, a building addition to the campus to provide those spaces for each one of those campuses. To go to the question to more specific details of what's in that, I like to use the analysis of when you're in an airplane. When you're flying high in the airplane, you get a broad view of what everything is below you, and that's where we're at through this process. There's a series of gates that have to happen through the bond planning process, both in meeting with the district, engaging with the community, calling a bond, passing elections, and then going to the constituents and stakeholders at the campuses to help identify the true absolute needs. Some approaches would say from the very beginning, let's meet with all these people and let's talk about the specific needs. Let's build the exact recipe of what it is that we want to put in this building. And then as you go through these stages, things can happen, like if a failed bond happens and there's a lot of work that went into that that's lost as a part of that process. So when I talk about an airplane, I talk about we're at the 30,000 foot level, and as we're descending and getting closer to landing, which would be completion of the project, we get more and more detail. So as we pass through these gates, we start to engage with different folks, different stakeholders, different people as a part of the process to define the projects more and more. So where we're at right now, 30,000 foot level on the fine arts, is that we know we need to add a black box theater space. We know we need to add mariachi space to the campuses. We have put rough programming dollars and square footage to allocate to the dollar figures that you're seeing. We've run cost analysis. We're looking at everything from how much it costs to what needs to possibly go into it, and then contingencies that help to alleviate things that we don't know. When you build on an existing site, it's not, you can dig a hole and all of a sudden there's a gas line. You may have the conversations and things need to adjust with the program based on needs. There's a lot of those conversations that happen kind of through those gates, and those are the kind of the, as we're landing, you get more and more detail to be provided. So as we go, we'll continue to provide those details, but what I'm saying is it's not necessarily at this stage that we can provide a deep amount of detail that says this is what we're doing, because again, it hasn't gone through all those stages of thought. Trying to remember the other questions. Yeah.
You know, you said you weren't at the December meeting, and there was a lot more detail presented there regarding each campus. So I do invite you to go to the McAllen ISD website, and there's a specific website just for this committee. I hope it's on the presentation that we can see it. But in there you can see, and Dr. Gutierrez or Ruben, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what we're presenting here tonight is largely in line with what was presented in December. I know there might be a couple minor changes, but largely you can see campus by campus, the large projects in there. And maybe we can get clarification on that slide, because I actually had the same question. Said the remaining funds will be used for Priority 1 projects. What that means is that the Priority 1 projects that were presented in December are included in there. Well, that $103 million is inclusive of those projects. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the facility assessment report that was done earlier in the year identified needs across the district. They went to every single campus, they toured, they understood the needs, they created a list, and off that list is where a lot of those elements come. So when you talk about HVAC improvements and upgrades, there were specific needs at each campus that were identified for that. They ran a complex calculation to determine the cost on all of these systems and the upgrades that are needed there. And what we've done is extracted that data from the report. We've created those high priority buckets, which were the ones that we presented in the slide, to know that those would be priority 1 to the $103 million that's being allocated. So to the question about everybody's going to want the maximum amount of money, the issues have already been identified as a part of the report. So we know what those issues are, but what we don't know specifically yet is the exact cost for each one of those. So as you work through all these little individual upgrades and additions at each campus, the costs will be figured out, and then if there's money left over, we would go back to the report and look at other priority 1s and identify things that we can address as a part of the extra money that's left over, if that makes sense. There's a lot of work to be done in those areas across the district, and those were the main priorities that were identified that needed to be addressed first and foremost. I think that was, and then the priority question about who's first or last. There is nothing in the current presentation that lists this is the first thing that needs to be tackled, or this is the least important thing to be tackled. The $335 million and the projects that are presented today is an inclusive list of projects that will be addressed. The schedule and the timeline will be irregardless of what's more important or less important, as we addressed in the previous questions, because it's going to be more driven around how do we build a schedule and a timeline to be efficient with the dollars and take as much opportunity to stretch the work as far as we can.
Just to clarify on that, sir, so we moved to McAllen roughly 13 years ago from Cy-Fair ISD, and we came from, and Katy ISD, we came from very successful bonds that had passed through there. When we get to the bond election, will we have renderings to show people? Because that's what got our bonds passed up there. This is the Cy-Fair blue carpet that's going to be in the classrooms. This is what the classroom's going to look like. This is what your furniture is going to look like. And that's what got people on board. And I got to McAllen when the bond was trying to be passed before, and we'd been here about 2 years, and all we kept hearing was, it sounds like a blank check. It sounds like we've got these big ideas, but we don't know what we're actually purchasing. And so I'm a little confused in how you're saying top to down.
Yeah. Yeah, so for that, as a part of the marketing and the information campaign, going out to the community, helping understand what some of that could be. And this, again, is another fine balance of providing excitement, helping people understand visually what this is, but also communicating that these are just conceptual renderings or conceptual ideas. That is critical. Because what we don't want to get into is if something's sent out and the community member says, well, that's not the way I would do that, right? That's not what it's meant to project. It's meant to project the excitement of the bond and the work that's going to come for the students and the improvements that are coming, not the specifics of that image. It's a fine line of providing that information and the thought and the visuals, but also not locking it in so that whatever I saw here during the information campaign is what I'm going to see, because it hasn't gone through a design process. So again, that's that same level of kind of getting to more and more detail of providing enough for people to understand, but also not locking it in as a finite, this is it. That's what I mean, yeah, through the visuals. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of the education is, because I mean, again, a lot of educators in the room, right? You have visual learners, right? You have, and our voters, they don't change just because they graduate from high school and become adults and vote, right? And so, yeah, there'll be those renderings and those concepts. Like Josh said, there's still some details to work out. So it may not look exactly like, I mean, if we find out, let's say you get into the design process and the city permitting says, well, this needs to be over here instead of here, you obviously have to have some flexibility, but that's a big part of the communications and the education piece, is so that people can see what it might look like, right? And so now again, we work really hard to have that be as accurate as it is with the information we have at that time. But yes, we certainly include that in the district. That is something we've already been in conversations with the district about having that presence. If you'll remember on the timeline, that community engagement part of that education piece is gonna happen during those months.
I'm involved with a PTO at Seguin Elementary, and we're going to be having a meeting with the general meeting for the PTO members, their parents. Would we be able to inform them of what's happening there?
Inform, right?
It happens about 5:30, it's after school, but it's in the school gym. So I don't know if we would be able to say, to support it or just to inform them.
Yeah, we can inform them and we can be there, the administration, myself.
Oh, okay, good, yes,
or
okay.
my group, we can be there.
All right,
then. Yeah, and
right.
For now, like, we can handle that, once we put a package together, after the board approves it, after February the 10th, we can put a pamphlet and information together that we're gonna send out. But if there's any meetings, by the way, with parents, and you want us to put it on the agenda to talk about it, ask us so we can.
Okay.
The executive cabinet, myself, and maybe perhaps some of my board members can also be there.
All right.
And we can talk to them and inform them. I would love that idea. The sooner we start, the better.
Okay, thank you.
So let us take care of it. Just let us know. And principals that are here, if you have some parent meetings and you'd like for us to start those conversations with them, we'll be more than glad to do that, and let us handle it at our level for now until we go through this process in the next coming weeks. Okay? So thank you for doing that. I would love to do that. No, because we can start talking to them about like what we're covering with this with the Facilities Forecast Committee. We can start talking about what we presented today to them. Up until yes. Any other questions? It's a lot of work that we have ahead of us, but it's exciting to see that McAllen could be a transformational district. More of a 21st century type of a facilities than not. Hopefully. We have a question, Ms. Tredla?
Dr. Gutierrez, I was just wondering, prior to, and I know we're still waiting, right, to make sure that the bond is going to move forward, but will we be putting out information to educate parents on how to sign up to vote if they are not already eligible to vote or haven't signed up to vote? Will we be putting out information for that?
Yes, and this is where our marketing team and the district, we're gonna have to, and we will put that information out there and send it out. You know, and campus principals help us by whatever we put in our district website. You can also help us and put that on your campus websites. But definitely, one of the things that we need to do more is also have the Spanish version of it. And so remind me in case we don't put, sometimes we forget to put the Spanish part. Remind me. I'm sure they can once we can get some information from, maybe I can get some information from the elections office. Right, to sign them up, yes. Absolutely, and we'll have to do that because we have until April 2nd, I believe.
And some districts even have it. You know, there is a position. I want to say I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's basically where you go through a training and then you're allowed to collect the voter registration cards, right? So there's some things you can do that. Anything in terms of educating people and registering to vote, when to vote, but just not how, not promoting a right. And again, the district works very close, has both their internal counsel and their bond counsel that can help make sure all the rules are followed.
Okay, we'll take one last question because I know we've done a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that we covered everything. But it's almost 7 o'clock, and I've promised to be respectful of your time to 7 o'clock. But we've had a lot of good discussion, great presentation. But one more.
In a room full of educators, we talked a lot about math, finance. We talked a lot about architectural, engineering, but we really haven't talked about history. And sometimes people don't want to be reminded of what happened in the last bond. I am ashamed to say that I voted no the last time. Oh. And I wasn't the only one. No, because it was 60-40. We are the underdogs. For us to flip it, we're going to need every single last vote. But all we got to do is win by one. And what normally they do in sports is they look at the previous games and they scout and they get really, all the way to the bottom. And they go with the personnel and they look at the other team and they say, look, like the realtors over here, and why are they so against it? Well, our job is to tell them that they're wrong. We should have done this 15 years ago so we wouldn't have kids in portable buildings. Like in Sci-Fair that they did it, when we would have done it, you would have been teaching in a regular classroom. I'm sorry I voted no. I'm a Fossum parent, but I want your kids to have the same type of school that my 3 boys went to. Because Fossum is the newest middle school. And we're so proud of that school. You should have the same pride just by having a regular building. But this is a McAllen thing, a McAllen ISD thing. This is not about that board guy or that bucket or that. No, this is all for one and one for all. And if we're not going to do it like this, we don't have a chance. Because the realtors over here are going to do it again. Because what do they want? But what do we want? No, we don't want money. I want my kid to be proud of the school that he goes to. Just like, and it's going to take a vote. We have the chance to right or wrong from 15 years ago. 15 years ago, one guy put up one billboard, and one billboard turned to 5, 10, 20. And guess what? That guy that put the billboards, he's actually on our team now. That's Mayor Villagomez. And that's how he started. And guess what? 15 years ago, man, hey, you know what? He's right. Or he's you know, I don't know what he said or what he did, but that one guy literally brought the bond down. Now, we have to rehash it, ma'am. We will, because we can't let that happen again. And we only got 4 months, 3 months, 4 months. So when somebody wants to rehash the past, what are we going to say this time? Now, maybe I may be wrong, I don't know, but maybe 15 years ago, they didn't have it where if we don't vote it for it now, then we're going to lose the 13 cents. There's the old saying, you know, what goes up must come down. Well, in this situation, we don't want it to go down. It has to stay there, and we have to show what those 13 cents are going to represent. And I know that's why the ladies kept on saying, hey, man, we need pictures, we need this, we need that, we need this. No, we need to educate the voter to say, you want to lose it? If we don't pass it, we're going to lose the 13 cents. And for us to get the 13 cents back, that is going to be extremely difficult. I wish I could use other verbiage, you know, but you know, but going back to the history and going back to sports and to, you know, like let's look at the old film, let's learn from it, let's not repeat our mistakes, and you know what? Let the coaches coach and the players play, and let's win-win. Thank you.
We need that kind of, that's exactly the kind of spirit we need out there for the next 4 months, right? So thank you for saying that. But I know principals, when we talk a lot about that, when we talk about data and student progress, that if our students are not doing well and we continue doing the same thing, what's the definition of insanity? That you're going to get the same results. So we've already looked at that game plan or whatever they had back then, and our approach has been very different. And we learned from that, and nothing to say bad things about anybody in the past, it's just things happen. But we're looking at it in a very different way, and our approach is different. And our tax rate, that tax rate compared to this one is very different. So that's a big plus for us now, coming into 2026 now. And so we've already looked into that, and we see that we have a very good momentum going with this bond. We have good vibes. I'm getting good positive feedback. Maybe not from the realtors, but I'm getting a lot of positive feedback, and we're going to outnumber the realtors. By the way, if that's the case. I do know some realtors that are on our corner, by the way. I do know some that are going to support it. But I feel very good about it. I feel that there's a lot of positive feedback, and we just got to keep that momentum going, be as transparent, informative as we can be. And I think we will have good results at the end of the election, and then McAllen will be better off for years to come. So I feel good about this. It's 7:01. Any closing statements before we?
Yes, for the realtors, because so as you know, I'm the principal at Collegiate Academy, brand new, beautiful building. So I had a parent who reached out to me from Austin, and they're moving down to the area, and so they were house hunting, and they're trying to see what district they were going to move to. She made the drive from Austin just to come visit Collegiate and was sold on the beautiful building. And so they're going to buy a house in McAllen. So when parents are looking for a place, they look at schools. They do. Academics. They do their research. So just wanted to share that because I've had a few move to McAllen and buy homes to attend Collegiate.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, then we will have this presentation on Tuesday at the regular board meeting, and we'll continue to send you emails, information. All of these presentations are online, and it says just keep it in your principals, everything, put it in your campus websites, and we'll be in touch for our next meeting and more information to come. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.